I decided that I will jump into this trend and create my own mid-year book freakout tag video today. Hi, hello, how are you? My name is Yulia and I will be honest here, I'm a newbie to this bookish community and I'm in no way a professional YouTuber, but I love reading. It's one of my biggest passions. I have a book club as well. All in all, so far, I have read 54 books. That I think is pretty good. My goal for this year is to read 100 books, and I believe I am somewhat sort of on schedule with that, depending on how the rest of the year goes for me. But so far, so good. I'm going with a schedule. I did include books that I DNF'd. I think there were about 5 or 6 DNFs for me this year, and I did include them in this 54, simply because for me, this is the books that I've read. I am not counting the books that I have read because I still spent time on reading those books. Some I DNF'd in the beginning, some I DNF'd in the middle of it, so I still consider them as books that I read. We are going with the number 54, and the books that I'm normally reading are pretty much all over the place. I'm a big fan of romantasy. I love me some good romantasy. I love thrillers. I love horror books. Like I pretty much read a good mix of everything. However, I do tend to consider romantasy as the main genre. So let's get into the questions. Best book that you've read this year. For me, it's something that came out of nowhere. I am in general not a big fan of novellas, and I can't say that I've read a lot of novellas for the reason that them being very short, and sometimes they don't add a lot to the story for me. So like, even if it's a series of books and there is a novella in the series, there is a very high chance that I would not read it simply because I want to get to more books to read this year. I don't want to spend my time reading novellas or like filler books and such, because novellas are, I considered novellas filler books. Up until this year, up until I read Six Scorched Roses by Carissa Broadbent, and I absolutely fell in love with this book. This is the best book that I read this year. I love the dynamics of the relationship. I love the sprinkle of darkness in the plot. I loved both morally great characters. I loved the story. So it was just like, it was a perfect piece of work for me. So this will be the best book that I've read so far. Best sequel that you've read this year. I would consider this book as a book that I read this year, and I started it last year, in the late last year, and I completed it this year, and this is The Ballad of Never After. And I mean, if you read, you know, like there is just, it's so magical. I would have never expected to like the series, and I did, and I am so grateful that I came across the series, that I, decided to read the series, because I'm not a big fan of type of fairy tale-ish vibes. So I was on the fence before studying this book, and I was also on the fence while I started reading the first book. But as it happens, when you start reading the series, you just fall in love with the characters and the story. So this is the best sequel that I've read this year. New release that you haven't read, but you want to. And I feel like this book, everyone already read this book. I am waiting for a good weather, a good sunny summer beach weather to read this book, and this is Happy Place. Everyone is obsessed about this book. It took the book community by storm. I am living in a little bit of a nasty weather type of city. I'm living in Vancouver in Canada, and it's pretty much night. It's very gloomy still. It's not really summer here. It's not even spring. It feels like it's 11 degrees. So yeah, I'm just waiting for a good weather to read this book, and I'm very excited. Most anticipated release for the second half of this year. So I have two. Talking about A Ballad of Never After as being the second installment. I'm very excited to read the third installment, that is A Curse for True Love. And again, the second book finished in such a cliffhanger, and I cannot wait to get my hands on the third book in this series. And the second book that I am super excited to read is Iron Flame. That is the second installment in the series. I think it's called Imperial. It's the second book after The Fourth Wing. That again, another book that took community by storm. Cannot wait to read this book, and thank God that after the release of the first book, it's not even a year till the release of the second book. I have already pre-ordered it. I cannot wait to go back into this world and to see what adventures await in the main characters. A book that's out of your comfort zone. This book is very, very high on my list of books for this year. I gave this book 5 stars, and it is definitely one of those books that's out of my comfort zone, and it is called Stone Cold Fox. It tells a story of a woman. I feel like the story in this book is very heavily inspired by the movie Heartbreakers, but with a darker and more twisted plot. And we have the main character who is trying to establish herself, who is trying to find the right partner, who is very money hungry, who tries to establish a good life for herself. And then she finds her Prince Charming, and then she's trying to build this relationship. She has these goals to get married into this very, very rich family. And then little by little, she starts having the enemies in her life that try to reveal all the secrets that she has. It's a very high intensity book. There are a lot of secrets that the main character is hiding, and I love that. A lot of tension. Absolutely love this book. The book that has been the biggest surprise. So I have one, and for me it is How to Be Eaten. And this book has a really, really interesting synopsis. It's about several characters who have suffered through famous stories of the fairy tales, and now they all get together in this therapy group to talk about the psychological traumas that they have encountered. One of those characters is being Red Riding Hood, one is Gretel. These women are telling their stories, they're telling these horrifying experiences that they overcame while living through these fairy tales. And we can see what their life turned out to be after the fairy tale was over, because what we usually get is we have the fairy tale, we have the climax, and then we have the happy ending, but we don't know how these stories impacted the minds of these women. So now this book gives us more in-depth view on what is happening in each of these women's mind after what happened, after all the events that were happening in the past. It's truly fascinating book. I absolutely enjoyed this book, and I am always recommended this book to everyone. The Biggest Disappointment. This is a very easy one for me, and it's very easy. It's Magnolia Parks. I not sure why. I love Gossip Girl, and I feel like I went into this book expecting it to be like Gossip Girl, but it didn't happen to me. It fell absolutely flat. There was no plot. The drama was not there. It was very repetitive. The characters were not developed very well for my liking, and it had a lot of repetitions. They went from being together to being apart, to being together to being apart. Like, there was nothing to anticipate. Their relationship was not developing, and I did give this book a fair chance. I think I read up to maybe 130, 140 pages, and I DNF'd it. It didn't grab my attention at any point of me reading this book. So, unfortunately, this is a no for me. And there is a second series, there is a second book. Actually, it's a series that I also DNF'd that didn't work for me, but I know that many people love it. And it's Shatter Me. And the reason why this series fell flat for me is because I felt the lack of character development in this book, the lack of the world building, the lack of pretty much everything. Correct me if I'm wrong, but most people like this book for the writing style. That's also not my style of reading either. I didn't enjoy the way this book was written. I didn't enjoy the metaphors that the author was using. But there was nothing else to this book. Like, I couldn't get, like, the main character was so annoying to me. She's just a whiny little thing that I just, like, I couldn't stand. And every other character was telling her the same thing, like, stop whining, like, get yourself together, we need to save the world. And I understand that that's probably more realistic, but at the same time, I'm not reading books for realism. The realism is all around me. I'm reading the book for adventures, for strong female characters, and it just didn't do it for me. Favorite new author. So this will be very easy as well. This is Carissa Broadbent. I absolutely loved Six Course Roses. I loved the first book as well, The Serpent and the Wings of Night. I love her writing style. It is not, I know many people compare it to the Akatar series. I wouldn't compare it in terms of the plot or the characters, but I would compare it in terms of the feel. Like, I had the same feeling of anticipation, of high tense relationship building. I really loved it. I cannot wait to read The Ashes and the Starcursed King. Newest fictional crush. I have to say, I have to be very cliche here, and I just have to say that it is Xaden Riorson. I love this boy. He is your typical bad boy, good heart, very protective, very caring, and he is hiding all this under pretense of being this rude and being this cruel and fearless, but he's such a softie inside, and I absolutely love this in the fiction men. So yeah, he's my new crush, like millions of other girls. The book that made you happy. The book that really made me happy is Every Summer After, and this is also not a very typical read for me. I do love romances, but I don't read them that often. I do read romance in the summers though. This book specifically made me very happy, not because of its romance, but because of the feel that this book gave me. This book gave all the right vibes. It was very summery, very cheerful, very carefree. The description of the weather, the description of the atmosphere, the description of the environment, it just all worked together for me to imagine me being there in that nature, near that lake, just enjoying my life and enjoying my summer. Like, it just gave all the right vibes. That's why it made me so happy. Now, the next question is the most beautiful book that you bought this year. And as I mentioned, I don't buy a lot of books simply because I can access them in the library for the most part. I don't have a lot of space to keep the books in my home. But I did buy this book the moment I saw it. It's absolutely stunning. It's gorgeous. You would know. And this is this baby. This is Fourth Wing. It's absolutely stunning. When I saw the design of the pages and this gold and black cover, it is so pretty. And to be honest, I didn't even read into synopsis of this book. When I saw it, I already knew that I will love this book because I love everything that's happening in the school environment. I love dragons and I love magic, and it just had everything that I love so much in a good fantasy. So yes, this is the one that I picked up, and this is the most beautiful book that I bought this year. The book that made you cry. So I'm not a big fan of books that make you cry, and I specifically choose those books that I know for sure will not make me cry because I'm a crier in a regular life. I am a frustrated crier in a regular life. I get upset very fast, and I'm working on that. But in my escape world, I prefer to be happy and I prefer to be entertained. And I try to avoid the books that make me cry as much as I can. However, we already know that I have read Fourth Wing this year, and this is the only book, I think this is the only book that made me cry, but I would never be able to avoid this book. I would still read it. But as in any high fantasy, really, we have some of the main characters that we grow to like a lot die, and unfortunately this is what happened in this book. Do I think that the death was absolutely unnecessary? Absolutely, because I would have loved this book the same or maybe even more if that character didn't die. But it happened, we lived through it, we survived, we move on. There would probably be more death further on, but I try not to think about it. I really like the story. I really like the main characters. I think they're the best couple of the fantasy in the fantasy world. So I would still read the next book, and no matter how many books are in the series. My favorite question is, what books do you need to read by the end of this year? I have a few. I have a very long TBR list, and I'm someone who doesn't read very fast, maybe because English is my second language. I tried different techniques. I tried not to see the words in my head. It didn't work for me. I still feel like I do pronounce the words in my head when I read the book. But I have a lot of books that I want to read. The first one is, I have already mentioned, I really want to read The Ashes and the Stalker's King because I'm absolutely obsessed with the series. And I do want to see the characters of the Six Scorched Roses back in the series, and I know they will be, so I'm very, very excited. The next one is on my list is I am reading A Throne of Glass, the series Throne of Glass, and I'm on the 4th book in the series. That's the Queen of Shadows, I believe. Yeah, I am reading Queen of Shadows, and I do enjoy it a lot. I absolutely love Crescent City, and I love the Court of Thorns and Roses. And these series are absolutely phenomenal. They are one of my favorites. Do I love Throne of Glass as much? No. But I would still want to finish the series. I will be finishing it this year. The next series I really, really want to read is Zodiac Academy. I feel like everyone and their mother read this series. I heard a lot of good things about this series, that it's a very, very high intensity romance. I know that there is lots of trigger warnings as well, but they don't scare me at all. I really want to get into the series as fast as I can, and I will be getting into the series shortly after I finish Throne of Glass. The next 2 books that I really want to read this year are part of Kindle Unlimited, and I believe that this will be the only reason why I might be subscribing to Kindle Unlimited, just in order to read these books. The first one is Fear the Flames, and I don't really know anything about this book other than that it's a high fantasy. It has really good reviews and it has dragons, and that's all that I need to know. And the second book I know even less about. It's called Leaves May Fall, and this was just a random recommendation by Amazon to me, and it seemed really fun. It has a gorgeous cover, it has a fantasy world, it has magic, and it has a fate prince, and that's pretty much all the girl needs. The last series that I really want to get to this year, and please let me know if you read the series because I haven't heard too many people speak about the series. The series is called The Kingdom of Crows, and the first book of the series is House of Beating Wings. I am very, very excited. Again, I don't know too much about this series. It's an epic fantasy romance full of deceit, betrayal, and false loves that could swallow a person whole. And it's great for the fans of Sarah J. Maas, and that's who I am in my heart, in my soul. I love Sarah J. Maas. This is pretty much my absolutely top 5 book series that I want to read this year. So yeah, this is my little mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.